Hello, I'm Kyle Bell of Game Freaks 365. This is a special edition of the Weekly Gamer. Tonight we are going to announce the 64 games that make up the 2008 Game of the Year tournament. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Game of the Year tournament, it is an annual event here on Game Freaks 365, now in its 6th year, where fans of the site get to vote for what games they believe was the Game of the Year. We seed each of the 64 games by how good we think they are and place them in an NCAA-style tournament bracket. At midnight each night, a new poll will be posted on the homepage, and the results from the previous day's matchup will be revealed in our bracket. But before we can get to voting, let's go ahead and announce what games made this year's tournament. Since we only have a few minutes, we are going to start with the 4th seed and make our way up to the 1st seed before we head on over to the bracket itself. Starting off with the 4th seeded games, we have Rock Band 2 from Electronic Arts, God of War Chains of Olympus from Sony Computer Entertainment America, Prince of Persia from Ubisoft, and Chrono Trigger DS from Square Enix. The number 3 seeded games include Left 4 Dead from Valve, Call of Duty World at War from Activision, Fable 2 from Microsoft, and Burnout Paradise from Electronic Arts. The 2nd seeded games include Little Big Planet from Sony, Grand Theft Auto 4 from Rockstar, Dead Space from Electronic Arts, and Resistance 2 from Sony. Finally, we have our number 1 seeded games. They include Metal Gear Solid 4 from Konami, Super Smash Bros. Brawl from Nintendo, Gears of War 2 from Microsoft, and Fallout 3 from Bethesda. Now we're going to go ahead and go down the bracket and look at some notable matchups. We're going to start off in the Kyoto bracket with number 1 seeded Metal Gear Solid 4 going up against Need for Speed Undercover. Number 2 seeded Little Big Planet is going up against number 15th seeded Tom Clancy's N-War at the opposite side of this bracket. The 4th seeded Rock Band 2 is going up against 13th seeded Motorstorm Pacific Rift. And Left 4 Dead, the 3rd seed, is going up against 14th seeded Bang.io Spirits. The next bracket is Redmond. The number 1 seeded Super Smash Bros. Brawl will be going up against Sonic Unleashed, the 16th seed. On the opposite end of the bracket is the 2nd seeded Grand Theft Auto 4, which is going up against 15th seeded James Bond Quantum of Solace. The 4th seeded God of War Chains of Olympus is going up against Lock's Quest, the 13th seed. And the 3rd seeded Call of Duty World at War is going up against 14th seeded Tomb Raider Underworld. In the Tokyo bracket, number 1 Gears of War 2 is going against 16th seed Wii Fit. Number 2 seeded Dead Space is going up against 15th seeded Dragon Quest IV. 4th seeded Prince of Persia is going up against 13th seeded FIFA Soccer 09. And 3rd seeded Fable 2 is going up against Nintendo DS adventure game Professor Layton, a 14th seed. Finally, the Redwood City bracket. At the top of the bracket is number 1 seeded Fallout 3, going up against 16th seeded Sam & Max Season 1. Resistance 2 is going up against Samba de Amigo, Resistance 2 being the number 2 seed. Number 4th seeded Chrono Trigger DS is going up against 13th seeded Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. And 3rd seeded Burnout Paradise is going up against Nintendo's Animal Crossing City Folk, the 14th seed. That's all for this weekly Game of the Year Tournament special. I encourage you to vote. As I said, voting will be updated each night at midnight with a new poll, as well as results. Thanks for watching.